Why does a parent leave? And why do they choose to walk away from a child who needed them? You see, some children came home one day and their parent wasn't there anymore, just gone, and nobody sat them down to put into proper perspective what just happened to them. Nobody gave them an answer, a reason that made sense to them. And they had to sit inside that absence, live inside that absence, and try to make sense of a puzzle that was never going to be answered for a very long time. What I'm trying to answer with this video is about what that does to a person, to the one who was left behind, what that does to the family that they will raise or they will try to build later on, and why that same pattern keeps showing up generation after generation. This episode is about abandonment, not necessarily as a tragedy, but as a weapon. You see, abandonment is a parent sending a message to their child, a very simple message to their child through their absence, a message that lands very, very deep, that they were not worth staying for. And that child has to live inside that message every single morning when they wake up and the person who should be there is absent, or when they go to school and they observe other children having both parents while they have one or have none at all, or when anyone comes to that child and asks them the question that they themselves are trying to answer, why their parents left. All of those situations, all of those outcomes, all of those experiences break the person even more, because a person at that age, that young age, doesn't have the capacity or the tools to rationalize, to process, to understand, to come to terms with the fact that their parent left. They can't make sense of that, so they will do what any other person at that age will do. They will try to make sense of it with the only available information that they have. And the conclusion that many of them come to is that something must be wrong with them. It doesn't even have to be a verbal conclusion, just a very silent conclusion, but one that they believe very deeply. Something so terrible that it caused their parents to leave, something unimaginable, something terrible must be wrong with them. If not, their parents would have stayed, and some of them live the rest of their lives trying to disprove that conclusion or just living like it's true. And the child of a parent who left grows up building an image of their parents using whatever scraps of information they can lay hands on, using stories from other people, old photos, or whatever they overhear from outsiders, from those around them, from relatives, or from friends of their parents, and using their imagination to fill up whatever gap is left in the image that they are trying to build. And that image that they build becomes something that they constantly measure themselves against, either trying to surpass that image or mourning and grieving the loss of that image, which most times is not even accurate. And some of them try to lock up that wound and move on because they don't want to be limited by their past, which is good. But you can't just willpower your way out of a wound in your soul, out of a stronghold in your soul. So no matter how hard they try, the wound doesn't stay locked up. It seeps into their daily life, seeps into strange decisions that they make, reactions that they give out that leaves everyone around them confused. And some of them try to search for their missing parents in other people, or they try to turn their spouse or their friend into the father or their mother that left. And when that spouse inevitably fails to become that parent who left because they were never that person in the first place, when they fail to become that parents who left, the marriage breaks, fractures, or splits entirely. Abandonment also produces, like rejection, produces a terror of being left because the person has experienced the worst of it, what you might call the worst of it. The person who was supposed to stay left, so they no longer trust anyone to stay. They expect everyone to leave. They feel it's just a matter of time. So they can either leave before they are left. Whenever there is any sign of conflict or disagreement, they leave first or they shut out first, hoping to control when they split, when the rejection will happen, than having it happen to them passively. Or they go extra mile, they go out of their way to cling and try to fix everything, having unhealthy loyalty, staying in places that they should have left long ago, tolerating what they had no business tolerating, cutting off people the moment they get too close, or sabotaging things that were going well because they believe it won't last. It also produces a distorted relationship with God as Father, or no relationship of such nature, because whenever the person who grew up without a father or whose father left hears that God is their father, it might have been better you never said that at all, because their understanding of the word father means one who leaves, one who is unreliable, one who will abandon them, or one for whom they need to perform to get them to stay. And they subconsciously expect God to do the same, to be the same like their parents who left. And also anger, it produces anger that hovers because it has nowhere to land, because the one whom that person is angry at is not there to receive the anger. So the anger just hovers and broods, gets worse and worse, then surfaces in the wrong conversations, in situations that should not have warranted such level of reaction towards the wrong people. And since some of them do not understand that they are angry at what happened to them when they were much younger, they conclude that something is wrong with them. It just reinforces that idea that something is wrong with them. And anger also is fueled by demonic entities who orchestrated that abandonment in the first place, because a parent doesn't just abandon their child out of nowhere. They have to be convinced that what they are doing is right, or at least is correct for them, is the best thing that they should do. Many of them believe that they are doing the best thing for the child, or at least for themselves, and that the child will be fine. And a person doesn't get to that point without whispers, without thoughts from dark entities. That abandonment creates a void in the soul of the child, where that parents who left should have filled temporarily and pointed them, directed them to God, who has the capacity to fill that void completely and adequately. But since the parent didn't do that, the child wanders from person to person, from place to place, seeking help, seeking rescue, seeking someone to fill that void. And they might not even know. Most people don't know that they are looking for someone to fill a void in their soul, trying new things, going to new places, going from friendship to friendship, from relationship to relationship, going through different marriages, going through divorces, seeking someone to fill a void in their soul that their parents should have filled. Because you cannot access a person if you do not take their parents out of the picture, or have their parents give you permission to access such person in one way or another, either through negligence or through ignorance or through deliberate wicked intention. But their parent has to give permission to such dark entity to access such a person. So before that principality can access the life of that person, they need to make sure their parent does something to that person that creates open doors in the life of such a person. So one way that they can do that is by convincing their parents to leave, convincing such person's parents to leave, to abandon them, because such abandonment creates open doors, leads to unforgiveness, to anger, to low self-esteem, to false identity, and any of this can give enough access to a dark entity to enter the life of a person and begin controlling it for as long as that person gives that dark entity the permission to do that in their lives. So that is the weapon that the enemy uses. Another of the weapons that the enemy uses to target families. In addition to rejection, in addition to promiscuity, he also uses abandonment. Convince the parents to leave, gain access to the person whose parent has already left, since the parent is no longer there to cover them spiritually. Fragment their soul, whisper thoughts of hatred, of unforgiveness, of anger, of low self-esteem. Convince them to abandon their identity, or give them a false identity, since they don't know who they are in the first place, since their parent never told them that, and just keep controlling their lives and orchestrating scenarios that will further confirm the whispers that you are giving to them. Drive them to other broken people in their search for help and for healing and for truth. Drive them to other broken people who will further fragment their soul and leave them in a helpless and hopeless states. And then, if possible, cause them to form a family, create a family, and just repeat that unhealthy family environment and bring new people, new destinies into the world that are disadvantaged from the start because they were born into an unhealthy environment. And the cycle just keeps repeating over and over and over again. And so, how can this be fixed? What happens to a person who experienced this when they were younger? What now? Well, first, a few things. Number one, you have to ask Holy Spirit for help, because a human being cannot fix your soul. They can't try the best that they can. There are many amazing methods out there, but you have to be careful, because some of them will just open doors to other darker spiritual entities. Some of them that you think might be healing, like LSD and psychedelics, those ones will just open doors to other demonic entities to infiltrate your life and make your life worse than what it is currently. So you have to be careful. Don't do that. But therapy seems to achieve some result. But the problem with therapy is that it cannot go to the depths of where the damage is and completely root it out. It can help you to maintain a steady, seemingly functioning life, but it cannot undo what was done. What it does is kind of like patchwork or management. But what Holy Spirit does is that He completely roots out what happened to you and brings you to a place where the things that happened in your past no longer affect you in any way, such that when you recall those events, you feel nothing, not because they had no impact on your soul, but because you have been brought to a place where you are now completely healed from them, and so they cannot affect you in any way. So that is what Holy Spirit does. But how you get to this place is first asking Him for help. You have to vocalize to Him. You have to actually say the words, Holy Spirit, help me. That is your first step. You have to ask for help. And to do this, you need to at least submit to Holy Spirit for Him to help you. Every spirit that wants to access your life needs your invitation before they do so, including Holy Spirit, because although He is the strongest spirit, that is the law He laid down. He needs your invitation. That's the free will part. He needs you to invite Him in. So you need to invite Holy Spirit into your life, into the trauma, into the wound, for Him to actually help you. So you need to say, Holy Spirit, I invite you into my life, and I invite you to help me. I ask for your help and I ask for your mercy. Words like this, you need to invite Him into your life before He helps you. Then forgiveness. Holy Spirit will give you instructions for you to follow that will take you from the place of brokenness to the place of healing. But He is going to tell you to forgive, because unforgiveness is a tether, is a link to your past, a link that will not get caught, that can and will be exploited by Satan, by the enemy, if you do not cut it off, if you do not completely close the door. So you have to close the door by forgiving the one who abandoned you and by letting go. Otherwise, you will be giving demonic entities, dark entities, access into your life to just continuously replicate the same pattern in your family and, God forbid, in those of your children. So you have to forgive. Then next, instructions. Holy Spirit will give you instructions to keep based on your specific conditions. Your instructions can be different from my instructions, but there are general instructions for everybody. But that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your specific instructions. He will give you instructions specific to your case. You will know when He's giving them to you. And those instructions are for you to keep without negotiation, because they will lead to your healing. What He does is that He handles the roots. He roots it out from your soul completely. You can also make that prayer for Him to do that, and He will do it. So that's it for this video. I hope this video helped you in a tremendous way, or at least helped you understand some things that previously were hidden to you. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, and I'll try as much as possible to answer them. And I'll see you next time.